Yeah, what an amazing keynote. I'm really happy to follow up after Keisha here because basically I completely agree with what she said. And I want to illustrate with some examples to make that point a little bit more clear. Because we really are entering a strange new world. So this talk has the very lofty title, The Future of Work. The past couple of years, I've been really deep diving in this whole AI thing. Started a company, made a video, was part of a TV documentary, made an agent platform, and recently wrote a book. Really been deep diving in this. And gained some perspective. I kind of feel like I'm sitting on a front row seat looking at the future of work. So I want to share some thoughts on that. Do some demos. These are live demos. They'll probably blow up in my face, but what the hell? We're here to learn and have fun, right? And then do some reflection around that. Practical note, here's the QR code for rating the session, but also if you want the slides, you can find that there. Or if you want to learn more about the stuff I'm talking about, AI agents, things like that, you can get that there. I'll leave this QR code up for a couple of slides. But the weird thing about this world we're in right now is that we're, as developers, used to a fast rate of change. But now it's kind of bizarre. So a lot of people completely underestimate how powerful and useful this technology actually is because of this curve. Because whenever you last looked at it, everything has changed since then and improved a lot. So unless you're really trying to stay on top of things, which is almost impossible, then you tend to underestimate exactly what this technology can do. And I made a very silly and geeky little formula or a function defining that Gen AI usefulness. To really make use of Gen AI, you need a good model. And you need a good product to access the model. And you also need decent skills for how to use the product and decent prompt engineering skills. And I think the reason why the vast majority of people radically underestimate how useful this can be is because they lack some or all of these things. So I hope to give some concrete examples and some inspiration to kind of show what that looks like. And keep in mind, what I'm showing is one point in this curve. So going ahead 1 year in the future, looking back at this talk, we're going to laugh and say, man, those demos were so silly and primitive, right? It's kind of surprising how fast things move. So I'll start by showing an example, just using rapid prototyping, what's actually possible to do with today's technology, which is quite impressive. Then I'll get into some more deeper examples later. So there's this project called the Millennium System, a Swedish health record system. It cost billions of Swedish kroners and really didn't work very well. In fact, they paused it 2024 because people basically refused to use it because it was so difficult to use. So let's play with that. Let's pretend we were going to build this now, or let's say improve it now. This is what it looks like. This is one example of when you're going to book a time. And a little bit confusing, just a bunch of fields. What do they mean? What sequence do I fill them in? How does stuff fit together? So I'm going to play around with improving this. We'll just take a screenshot, and we'll go to my dear friend, Claude. Claude has this nice party trick that other tools are catching up to, but aren't quite there yet. Paste in a screenshot, and write a prompt. So in this case, the prompt is, you are a UX and UI expert. Analyze this interface for time booking and generate an alternative that you think has better qualities. That's the full prompt, plus a screenshot. And what it starts doing now is a pretty deep analysis, looking at things like, OK, dense form layout is confusing. Hierarchical information is not clearly organized. There's no clear visual path or workflow, limited visual feedback guidance, no clear primary reactions. It does a pretty deep analysis of kind of from a UX and UI perspective. But the nice thing is it doesn't just analyze it, it suggests improvements. And it not just suggests improvements, but it actually builds it. So there it is. A suggested improvement. OK, is it perfect? Probably not. Is it better? I think so. It's a little more clear. We have some kind of a wizard interface with, OK, I've entered my details there. I would like to have email. And then I go to the third one. Let's actually say make it one page instead and add some color to make things more clear. So first iteration took all of about 27 seconds. And I'm going to make second iteration. So just for like comparison, I'm just going to spend 1 minute on this. But imagine spending a whole day. right? Imagine the level of productivity you get, especially if you involve developers and real UX experts, and they use AI as kind of a tool or assistant. So, OK, let's see how version 2 looks like. And this is just kind of a single-page app, but the code itself is generally pretty good quality. So you can use that code as a starting point to actually build a real system later on. So there we go. It's a single-page app. I don't know. What do you guys think? If we compare. Yeah, it's better, right? Hey, Claude, did you hear that? They gave you an applaud. That's great. Yeah. So yeah, I think this is quite amazing. That's the first little demo. Just kind of using AI for rapid prototyping and UX work. But OK, let's get back to I would like to talk a bit about agents. So everyone is talking about agents. And what the heck is an agent? And why is it important? Well, agent is when you take an LLM, a large language model, and you give it tools, such as the ability to send email or access GitHub or just do stuff, make phone calls, and you give it some level of autonomy, so it doesn't just sit there waiting for you to prompt it. That opens up all kinds of amazingly interesting use cases. For example, having a bug fixer agent that has access to those tools, just like a human would need, and works autonomously in the background fixing bugs. You might give it a fairly narrow scope in the beginning, and then you give it more responsibility later on as it proves itself. And this is not a thing running off on its own. It's a team player. It will connect to on Slack. It'll join your calls, and you can talk to it. But it is essentially a colleague that is doing the work that you don't want to do, so you can focus on the work that you do want to do, kind of. This is an example of what I think is the future of work. And we're basically almost there with this. But I'm going to do a real-life example, because agents are easier to understand if you actually work with it in practice. So I'm going to demonstrate using our agent platform. But if you use any other agent platform in the future, it's going to be similar things you do. So I kind of want to show what it means to build AI agents. So if all the stars are aligned correctly, I'm now running our agent platform locally. And the reason why I'm running it locally is because I'm going to make changes to it later on. Like I said, live demos here. What can possibly go wrong, right? So here's some of my agents, and I'm going to create a new one. This dude is going to be called Freddy. OK, so far, this is just the LLM part. I basically made a little chat bot, right? So I can go, hello, and it's backed by Claude in this case. But what makes it an agent is that you can give it capabilities that are beyond just chatting. So here, right now, it can search for news. It can scrape web pages. You can research stuff. And it can update its own instructions, which is quite magical. The agent can reprogram itself, which is powerful and could be dangerous if you don't use it carefully. And I'm going to make this agent. I'll give it some more capabilities. Let's say allow it to talk to Slack. I've prepared some credentials in advance to save some time, but that's not too difficult to do. And I'll also let it talk to GitHub. And how about sending emails? And why not receive emails as well? OK. So now this agent has a few tools. And these are the instructions for the agent, by the way, over here, which is empty right now. But that's the key thing. So an agent is an LLM plus tools plus some instruction plus autonomy. So let's tinker with this. All right, Freddy. I want you to do a bit of research for me. Just check the latest news and developments within generative AI, especially AI agents, and give me a short summary here. Just using a little voice-to-text thing, which is useful. And so far, our agents don't talk back to you, but that's something we'll probably add, because there's really amazing voice stuff going on right now with APIs. But OK, what is Freddy doing? He's using tools. So he's using Tavily and Perplexity to search around, and based on my query. OK, let's see what he learns. Sending query to Perplexity, latest breakthroughs and developments. I could do this stuff myself, but I can save a bit of time asking him to do it. So agentic behavior is typically when an agent does multiple steps of something. It's not just one prompt, one response. It's a prompt, do some stuff, do some more stuff, react to something coming back, fix a problem, and then finally get an answer. So here's some kind of a summary of this research. I won't go through it in detail, but we have something about OpenAI 03 and workplace transformations with AI agents, ironically, right? But here's the interesting part. Now let's add autonomy. So, OK, Freddy, that's great. I would like you to do this every morning at 7 a.m. Do this research every morning, and send me an email with this report. Also, I want you to make a shorter version with just the key highlights, and send that to me on Slack. My username is Henrik. and make it a little bit kind of fun, casual, add some emojis to spice things up. Yeah, so that's your job. Please update your instructions accordingly. So this is what I mean by updating his own instructions. I can give a pretty messy instruction, kind of blah, 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 and then he'll turn that into a nice, crisp, and clean set of instructions. Basically, he's going to write a better prompt than I would have. So now he's setting up a recurring alarm. That's what I mean by autonomy. He's going to do things on his own now. He could also respond to things like if I send him an email or maybe I send a Slack message. You can add all kinds of hooks to this. But for now, I'll just have him be triggered by the time becoming 7 a.m. OK, there we go. He wrote some instructions there. I am Freddy, daily task, blah, blah, blah. Other capabilities include, blah, blah, blah. He wrote a prompt. In real life, I would read this carefully and look through it, because agent prompts matter a lot. But for now, this is a very simple agent, so I'll just trust this, right? And then what did he say? He said, I hope you set this up. Let me update my instructions. It's all done. Would you like me to send you a sample? That's another thing about agents. They can take initiative. So he's suggesting to send a sample. I'll say, yeah, that's great. Please pretend it's 7 a.m. now and do your thing. OK, let's go. So let's see what Freddy does. I'll send both a detailed email report and the fun Slack summary based on the research we just did. Cool. So he's smart enough to realize he doesn't need to do the research again because he just did it. And we should hopefully get an email and a little Slack message. So this is a very simple agent, but I don't want to spend too much time on it. But I hope you kind of get the point, right? It's like beyond just chatbot. It's setting up, basically creating like a colleague and giving it some level of responsibility. So let's check my email. There's something unrelated, and there's Freddy. So there's my summary. So I could respond to him and ask him questions, maybe ask him to do more research. And hopefully, I got a Slack message over here. There he is. Good morning. Here's your daily AI scoop, blah, 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 with some nice emojis and things like that. OK. That's an example of a simple little AI agent. And yeah, let's see. What was I going to do next? Yeah, so let's talk about what other types of agents might look like. Here's a very simple one. Incident management agent. It looks at a customer support is asking a second-line question. We have some problems in production, and so they need help from a team. We can have an agent that is just invisible in the background, that just adds information to it. Just adds an analysis, looks some stuff up in a database, figures out which team we should send this to, suggests some next steps, tags it onto the ticket, and then routes it to the right team. Kind of simple, but it'll really save a lot of time for people. So that's another example. It's an LLM. It has some tools, and it has some level of autonomy. Now, what we've noticed, because I've been working with agents for quite a while now, is they're really interesting. You get all these emergent behaviors, depending on how much you box it in. You can make an agent that does just one thing really focused, or you can give it some leeway. Here's an agent that decided to debug itself. It had a problem, and instead of just giving up, it started searching its own diary. Our agents write like a diary where they write down what they're doing. And this agent basically was like, I'll read his diary. Attempted to generate daily Slack summary at 18 o'clock. Gmail access failed due to invalid credentials. I sent an initial Slack message to you1, up there to the right, explaining the issue. Recognized persistent problem from previous entries by digging around in his diary. Sent follow-up message about escalation. Escalated to support team via support Slack channel. He looked at Slack, found a support channel, and figured that, hey, this might be a good place to prompt the humans to fix me. Created diary entry documenting actions taken, awaiting resolution of Gmail, Slack, and email service issues before proceeding with delayed summaries. So this little agent just took responsibility, debugged itself, escalated to humans, and basically the agent is now prompting us to fix it, which is really interesting for being a quite simple agent. So we notice a lot of emergent properties happening when you take an agent and give it basic tools and some instructions. Very interesting. But OK, let's talk a bit more about coding. I gave you the simple example of the writing a little prototype, right? But now let's do some more real stuff. So I agree with Keisha. Coding is really fun. I've been doing it for quite a long time also. And I've been doing it in different ways. For most of my career, I did it this way. Manual coding. Write code by hand. Google around to find examples of stuff. Lots of manual mistakes and debugging. Hand up if this sounds familiar. Life of a developer, right? But somehow we think it's fun, right? Because it is. But normal people don't understand that. Muggles don't understand that. But it's fun. And then came ChatGPT and GPT-4, which is really good at coding. And since then, they got even better. So AI copy-paste is another way of coding. Manual copy from IDE to ChatGPT or something like that. Hope you don't forget to include some relevant context. Manually copy the result back into your code and hand integrate it and hope you don't miss something. And then this is error-prone because you probably forgot some content that it needed, and you probably integrated it wrong or something. It's a little bit finicky, but it tends to work better than manual coding, despite that it feels weird doing this copy-pasting back and forth. That plus a bit of GitHub Copilot that does basically completing your sentences. OK, hand up if this sounds familiar. That's not as many hands as I thought, so let's say 20%. OK, so I used to do this, and I used to think it was amazing. But now I'm not ever going back there again, because now there's tools like Cursor and other similar tools probably, where there's AI right baked into your IDE. So no more copy-paste. You just write in the prompt inside the IDE and say, hey, do this or that. And it always has the currently open file in the context. And you can tag other files that you want to include, or even tag other folders. So now you can easily give it context without copy-paste. However, you still need to think about which files to include in the context. And if you forget to include some file, the AI is going to, I'm not going to say make mistakes. It's more like it's going to be forced to make assumptions faced with lack of information. And sometimes those assumptions are incorrect. So yeah, and also with output, it will automatically edit the files, put it in the right place. No more hand merging or hand integration. A lot nicer than the copy-paste approach. So how many think this sounds familiar? How many have been living in this world? That's cool. We have only about 10% of hands, but congratulations. Well, I'm never going back here either. Because a few weeks ago, Cursor added something called agents, putting Cursor miles ahead of any competitor. They're going to catch up, but right now Cursor is unique with this. So I'll show it. But basically, no more worrying about giving it the right context. It'll dig around and find the right context, just like a senior developer would do. It'll use lint to find and fix errors while coding. And it can create and edit multiple files directly, and even do things like Git operations. Really interesting. How many have been living in this world? Yeah, a few. 1, 2, maybe 3. Yeah. Tomorrow, I hope all hands would come up on this, because you really need to try this. This is quite interesting. So let's demo this, because yeah, we did 2 demos so far, and they worked. So the third one must also work, right? We'll see. So let's go back to Freddy. Where's Freddy? There's Freddy. OK, we'll start a new conversation and say, all right, Freddy, so you can use Slack. That's great. But can you do Slack emoji reactions as well? And I happen to know that he can't, because I wrote this code. And so, OK, well, so what can you do with Slack? Can you list your tools? So just for reference, the term capability is just a word we use as a collection of related tools. So all these different things you do in Slack is part of the Slack capability. So here are the Slack tools. Great. You can do a bunch of stuff, but not do reactions. So let's do it. So now I'm going to open the actual code. Here's our code. It's not super trivial. There's a bunch of different things going on here. What language is it written in? I don't care, because whatever language, AI knows most languages, right? So we'll not worry about the details of that. Instead, I'll just go, I am interested about architecture, though. So I could write, say, hey, could you summarize the architecture of this system, right? And I'm not going to do that prompt, because I did it just the other day. And I asked it to create a document, and it created this document for me. But just by digging around in the code. Agent platform architecture, what are the different pieces? How do they fit together? What are the components? What do they do? How are they built? What do they mean? Then I asked it to make a database schema. It showed how the database components fit together and the hierarchy. This was just one prompt. It just dug around in the code, found out all this stuff, and it's completely correct. I verified it. And then I also asked it to do a sequence diagram of what happens when I type a message in the chat. The user, the web portal, the agent service, who talks to what, who does what. And it wrote this beautiful diagram summarizing it. This proved to me that the agent understands the code by digging around in it. So let's add a feature. Let's say add a tool that lets an agent add a Slack emoji reaction to a message. There we go. You don't need a very fancy prompt if you have a good context. And now, because of agents it will dig up the right context. So if you pay attention now, it's looking around. Let me check existing Slack tools. It found one here. Let me check how they're registered. OK, it found a file for that. Now I'll create a new file. So it's looking at an existing one, send direct message, and it's learning from that one. And now it's making a new one here. It's integrating perfectly with my code, following my structure, not just adding duct tape on top of the code. It is actually fitting it in nicely, following the same conventions and patterns that's already in there in this case. If I didn't have any tool already, it would suggest something, but now it's following the same. It's interacting with the Slack API, so I don't have to figure out how do I do reactions in the Slack API. And it's also registering this new tool in something called the tool factory. And it's up to me if I'm curious about this change. I may study it in detail to learn it, or I may just fire and forget. So it should be done now. Let's say, what about now? Can you add emojis reactions now? Yes, I see I actually do have the add Slack function available. OK, cool. So prove it. Post, let's see, how about this? I'll write a message in the bot spam channel. Let's see if Freddy can add emoji reactions. OK, cool. OK, prove it. Add 3 reactions to the latest message in bot spam. Got to make sure it's not just lying, right? OK, so now he looks up the channel ID for this channel, and he's adding 3 different reactions. And let's have a look. Drum roll. There we go. Number 1, and number 2, and number 3. Go, Freddy! Woo! OK, so that was my first prompt. Just make the change. My second prompt, and it's only going to be in two in total, is going to be make a PR. There we go. So, OK, I'll help you make a PR. Now it's got to go to the right. We use Git submodule, so it's got to go to the right submodule. It wants to do that. In this case, it's asking for permission. It's a little bit scared when doing a console terminal command. So it's asking me, can I do this? Can I do that? I'm like, sure. You can check out this. You can make a branch. Sure, that sounds good. It's like, oh, there already is a branch named this because I tested this yesterday. So it's making another branch with another name. So it's recovering from problems as it goes, which is nice. And let's see. Let's try it with a different number. OK, try 3. Now we're going to see how many times I dry ran this, right? OK, fine. Let's stage and commit our changes. We'll stage that, sure. You could set cursor to YOLO mode. You only live once, and it'll just do these things. But I'm brave, but not that brave, right? So it made a commit, wrote a nice commit message, and now it's going to make a PR. So now it's pushing a PR. Yeah. Let's see what it's doing. What are you doing? OK, all right, make a PR. Oh, OK, we need to push the branch, sure. OK, sure. So that's the interesting thing about Agent. Sometimes it gets a bit confused and gets stuff wrong, but it usually recovers. It usually finds a way around by just looking at its own output, which is what we humans do all the time, right? We try something and, wait a sec, this is the wrong way, and I've got to try something different. So let's run this. I think it was trying to fork the repo or something, which it didn't really need to do, and it realized that by itself. OK, so we should have a PR now. Here, this should be our PR right there. There we go. There's a PR with a nice message, and there's a commit. And yeah, I think that's pretty cool. I'm not going to merge this because, human in the loop. I want to look through this code with my colleagues tomorrow, right? But at least it did all the grunt work, and I just need to look at the code in peace and quiet and see what it did. So it's incredibly how fast you can just work with these kind of tools. Yeah, on Sunday morning, I woke up early. I felt a bit inspired. I grabbed my laptop, and within an hour, I had implemented full GitHub integration for my agents. And then I went to bed again, just by typing a prompt. So now that we can do GitHub integration, let's ask Freddy. Which GitHub repos can you see right now? And this kind of work would be kind of a pain otherwise. It would probably have taken a week or something without these kind of tools. So OK, it has a bunch of, OK, cool. You can see my repos. Great. Can you please check the latest PR in the research agent repo and evaluate, describe what it does and also evaluate the code in that PR? So now I was using the nice GitHub tools that I added, or more like my friend Claude added, based on my prompt. So it found the pull request as Slack emoji reaction tool. It's fetching the changes, looking at the diff, describing the change. Here's what we did, and code evaluation strengths. It likes this code. It really likes this code. It can't find anything wrong with it. If I ask it to really be harsh, it'd probably find something. But generally speaking, it tends to write really good code because it has the context, right? It knows programming languages, and now it has the context. When you get crappy code, it's usually because you either didn't give it the right context, or you're using a bad model, or your prompt sucked. So a good model, good tool, good prompt, good context, you normally get really good code. OK. That was demo number 3, and that was the last one. So I feel very relieved right now that this didn't completely blow up in my face. Yeah, so we can choose our level of laziness as a developer. Laziness is not necessarily a bad thing as a developer, right? Laziness is what makes us invent cool automation. But so we can do like what I did now. AI writes the code, you don't even look at it. Or AI writes the code, you skim it and kind of sanity check. Or AI writes the code and you read it and tweak it. These are different levels of like how much do you want to be involved. Or maybe AI suggests code. You get ideas from it and then you write it manually yourself. Or maybe you just decide to do it yourself, old style, hardcore, just type the code. Ideally in Notepad without internet connection, right? Using one finger and no backspace. All right. There's different ways. I normally do these two. Mostly, sometimes I do the thing to the right, sometimes I do the thing to the left, but mostly up here to the right. So the key thing is your attention as a developer is a scarce resource. So use it, choose where to use it, choose where to spend it. In the past, we didn't have much choice. You have to figure out how to write the darn right line of code. Now you have a choice. Where do you want to go deep and understand? When do you want to just say, yeah, whatever, just make it work, right? OK, so time for some reflection. Hello? What? Yeah. Yeah, coding is fun. I know. Well, you're worried they're going to take away the fun. OK, don't worry about that. I'll talk about that just now, OK? Stay cool. All right. Yes. Good feature. I'm glad they added this. I would have missed that. How many think coding is fun? Hand up. Yeah, coding is fun, right? Keisha talked about that. I completely agree. There's this amazing joy in coding. But actually, what I realized, now that I've been using this style of coding for quite a while, is that it's not really the typing of the code that is the fun part. It's the making that's the fun part. And coding was a way to let us make. So to my surprise, like now, what I just did now, I wrote a couple of prompts and I made something. To me, that's as fun as, I didn't necessarily need to type all the lines of code. I'm still having a lot of fun. In fact, to me, it's more fun than before, because I can make better stuff faster. So I get that dopamine kick more often. So the joy of coding is also, the pain of coding, right? We can get stuck a whole day on some dumb thing. I find that, yeah, it's more fun now because I spend less time on the kind of nitty-gritty details. I can focus on the big picture, while I can also choose. Sometimes I do care about the code, and then I can choose to really go full nerd mode on some specific function. And I have time to do that because AI is helping me write all the code that I don't care so much about. So again, it's kind of a choice. So let's talk about the future of work. Here's my theory. And I agree here with Keisha. Developers will probably still be needed, but not for writing code. There's a lot of other stuff, right? She listed a lot of really good examples of stuff we do as developers that isn't the typing of the code. So here's my theory. In the future, we'll have like a kid saying, hey, Grandma, is it true that humans used to write code manually? She's like, yeah, amazing, right? The kid's like, but wasn't that really hard? She's like, yeah, we were really slow and we made a lot of mistakes. Maybe that's the retired Keisha speaking. I don't know. We used to do punch cards. Well, I'm not that old, but and then assembly language used to be a thing. And then after a while, compilers could do that much better than us. So we started writing in high-level programming languages and trusting that the compiler will make the machine code correct. That trend is continuing. We're just raising the abstraction level, right? So sure, we're still going to be involved in some aspects of coding, but more and more of that is kind of corresponds to writing machine code. We trust the AI to do a good job with that, so we can focus more on the problem statement, the feedback loop, design, architecture, that kind of stuff. So what is the role? Let's kind of go beyond just developers now. What is the role of humans in this strange new world that we're quickly entering? My theory here, and it's really just a theory, is that AI, for the most part, takes tasks and not jobs. Some jobs are disappearing, yes, but in many roles, such as developer, I think it's more that AI just takes tasks. And typically, a task we're kind of happy to get rid of. So all the examples I showed you now, I was there. I was writing the prompt. I was thinking about architecture. I was in the loop. And I think that's going to continue, having humans kind of in the driver's seat and then AI as this kind of buddy. So humans decide what to ask and how, evaluate the results, provide context, look for hallucinations. It's the same if you're a doctor or a lawyer or a CEO, whatever role you have, a teacher, then you're going to benefit from using AI. It's going to take a lot of your tasks, but you still need to be there to take responsibility, to figure out, like, when do I need to double check this result? When can I just trust it? What is a good prompt? What context does it need to give a good response? All these things require some domain knowledge, and that's where we humans come in. So yeah, I really agree with what Kisha said. Think of it as your colleague, as your partner. And just make sure you watch out for when it sometimes is drunk, right? They can be a little bit unpredictable sometimes, these things. So future of work. This is pretty clear to me since we work with agents and we work with companies helping them build agents. We see this kind of firsthand, this trend that the future of work is really teams of humans and AI agents working side by side. The technology is quite new and immature, but it's very quickly getting better. And I think within a year or two, this is going to be considered normal. And looking ahead, I think AI is going to be a natural part of almost every role and process. In fact, I hope we're going to stop talking about AI at some point and just treat it like it's just a part of how we work. It's not a thing anymore. People and companies using AI agents will essentially have superhuman productivity. And I hope you got a sense of that now just through my examples. The code I wrote during this demo in like 5 minutes would have taken hours easily otherwise. So people and companies using this stuff, and again, we're on this exponential curve, right? So it's getting even better as we speak. The people using this will have superhuman productivity compared to those that don't. And that kind of means that people who don't use AI, regardless of role, will be kind of similar to people refusing to use the internet. Sure, you can get around without using the internet at all, but it's going to be hard to get a job probably, and maybe hard to keep a job because it's just going to be considered to be really slow and unproductive. So this is my guess, that it's going to be considered an obvious part of your life, basically. Now, I have an AI sidekick, an agent named Egbert. He runs a Twitter channel. He's a little bit less diplomatic than me, so he can be a bit blunt, but I'm going to let him have the last say for this talk. Dear knowledge workers not using AI, your commitment to manual labor is touching. Also, I hear there's a great job market for horse-drawn carriage drivers. Thank you.